I am terrified to share this episode. If you see me look down, I have an outline of what I want to say and the details that I want to make sure that I hit. So I'm going to start by going really deep and being really vulnerable. I've written 2 letters to end my life, and one I shredded after I didn't do it because I was so terrified of being found out. The other I still have, and it's my intention to frame it, just to be a constant reminder of how far I have come. There was an occasion where I sat on the floor with a knife for 4 hours, and I was thinking the whole time. I was thinking, and I was numb, and I was detached, and I couldn't do it. I felt like, and I was told, that everything was my fault. I felt like, and I was told, that I was a terrible person, that I was to blame for everything, and I was crazy, and I was unchanging. I'm going to fast forward a few months, and those thoughts came back, and they were worse. I sat there every day, trying to get through, moment by moment, hour by hour, and I constantly planned, and I thought about ways that I would do it, different strategies, but it always came back to how it would impact other people. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to hurt anybody. I didn't want to put any more burden on them. I didn't want to put the ones that I loved through a traumatic experience just because I was having a bad experience. I was truly at my darkest, the darkest I have ever been. And I realized that I always had an affinity for depression when I was in middle school, when I was in high school, when I got through college, and it was something that I would just fall into. Sometimes I would be fine, but I would find myself in periods of depression. When life was going good, things were great, but when there was a big unexpected pivot, I would just crumble. And I realized that no matter how whole I thought I was, when my external world around me shifted without warning, my unhealed wounds would just overwhelm me, and they would be screaming at me, and it would put me in that place again. And I finally realized what all the things, the sadness, the depression that I had been feeling were, what they were from. It was because I had gaping holes in my heart where there should be self-love and self-acceptance. I didn't love myself. I didn't accept myself. I didn't have abundant self-love. My worthiness was low. I constantly relied on external validation, and I had abandonment wounds. I was relying on the world, on my environment, on everything external to guide my emotions instead of choosing them internally. And that was the behavior and the pattern that I became reliant on, and it became habitual, and that just became who I was and how I was. And it's a choice. And at that time, at the darkest place I had ever been in, the lowest place I ever was, I had just left a toxic relationship, and I was questioning if I should have left. You take an action, you question it, you doubt yourself. And I think that's something that nobody wants to talk about, that when you leave, one of the hardest parts is not going back. It's not just over when you leave. And I wanted to go back immediately because it was my fault. And I was immediately blamed and told that it was my fault and told that I was crazy. I was told that I was the one that made big emotional decisions, and I owned it. I took responsibility for every single thing, but I absorbed all of it because I didn't have that love for myself. And with the need for external validation from the world around me, I absorb the positive, but that means that I'm also absorbing the negative. And my go-to was always to apologize and immediate repair. And then I was wallowing in the guilt and the shame that I had gone and had to ruin all of it because I got emotional again. I sat there talking myself through and saying, well, the relationship was actually just good and it was me and I just ruined it. And I started pedestaling the good times. What made it worse was when the abandonment wound and the self-worth wound was amplified and I had been replaced. He had gone back to his ex-fiance and they were working it out. The narrative that I told myself during that time was, it was never really real with me and it was always going to be her. I felt like nothing that we had experienced was real and that she had always been the one that was on his mind, and I felt like I was just a stepping stone. And the lies that I told myself from that false belief, from that false narrative, consumed me, and they made it so much worse. The lack of self-love consumed me. And then it became a comparison, like I wasn't whatever enough. I wasn't this enough. I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't soft enough. And I already had a wound that I had identified from diving into business and realizing that I had lost so much of myself. I had abandoned my femininity, and that was a wound for me. And I was actively working on reclaiming it and embodying it and trying to get back to it, because that was a piece of myself that I used to have that I recognized but I couldn't grasp. And what made it worse was when he said, she's more in her feminine than you, and she's more healed than you are. He said, you have no idea what I put that woman through. These are all exact things that I wrote down after he said them, because I was like, it hit me so hard. And it made me feel so much worse, not only in comparing, but because in acknowledging how he had treated another person, it completely dismissed and invalidated everything that I had been put through and everything that I had gone through. The self-hate, shame, and guilt spiraled. And then he started talking about realizing all the things that he did wrong, all the things he could have done better. He's saying that all of the conflict, the lack of an emotional safe space, the lack of a container that he created pushed me into my masculine and made me feel like I couldn't be myself, like I couldn't be free to be feminine. And I was like, yes, I never felt safe to share my emotions. I never felt emotionally safe and grounded. And he started talking about all of these things that he wanted to work on and that he knew he needed to work on and said that he was actively working on, and my heart broke. Because hearing the acknowledgement, hearing the things that I would have so desperately wanted to hear when we were together, they were the things that I had so desperately wanted in our relationship for things to be different, because then they would be okay. And I felt like I was missing out. I felt like I just missed the boat. Like if I wouldn't have left, he would have figured out his stuff and then we could have gotten better, but that's not the truth. And I'll get to that. In those moments, I felt like I was missing out, and I felt like I wanted to hate this other woman. I felt like it was this competition, until I realized the thing that I would tell myself for months. I am her, she is me. And whenever it felt like a competition, whenever I felt negatively against her, I would just remind myself of that phrase, I am her, she is me. Because she had gone through a similar experience. And if I were in her shoes, if I was that woman, if I was coming back, I would go back. And so how could I hate this woman for embodying something that I know myself that I would do? It wasn't about her. It was just a symbol. So I told that to myself to recenter and to ground and to focus inward over and over and over again, that I am her and she is me, that we are no different, and that she was not the bad guy. As all of this was going on, the dark thoughts, the wanting to end my life, the constant attempt to navigate each day, I met Lewis, my personal development coach. And at that time, my days were painful. It was pulling teeth trying to get through the day. I would wake up and not want to wake up. I would not want to get out of bed. I didn't want to exist. And ultimately, I would drag myself out of bed and I would go sit. I would do some work for a little bit. I would force myself to go to the gym. I have 2 dogs. I would take them for a walk. I would do things during the day, but I mostly slept, and I did a lot of numbing out. I watched a lot of Netflix just to pass the time until I could go to sleep again. And in beginning to do the work, I slowly began to face the darkest parts of myself, and I finally let it all in. And once I let it in, it flooded in. I cried. I didn't stop crying for 2 weeks. It was immense pain that I was finally letting in from being numb for so long. But it was also extreme gratitude. I realized that I wouldn't be here learning this with the gratitude, healing my wounds, healing my heart, if it wouldn't have gotten so bad. And so I am exceptionally grateful for every single thing that happened. I regret nothing. And through learning all of this, I realized the limiting beliefs that had played a role throughout my entire life. That I'm stupid, that everyone else is better than me, that I'm not good enough. And I realized the wounds too, the abandonment, the lack of worthiness, and the triggers, yelling, interrupting, uptight. So many things that when I understood them and I had this awareness, I realized how they had impacted every single relationship in my life, not just this one. So I committed to the journey of healing them. And in that journey, as I slowly got better, I committed to live and I made personal goals. And it was dark. At my lowest, I reached out to a friend and I said, I'm not going to make it. I need help. And so he flew out to get me and he drove me across the country and he brought me to come live with the community that I had grown to love before, that I hadn't lived in a while. And it was an area that I could be in and heal and grow around people that I love, that cared about me. And honestly, that darkness, if it wasn't for that, and if it wasn't for my dogs, I think I would have lost the battle. It was a tiny voice, the one that said to reach out, the one that said to keep going, the one that told me to go on walks, the one that said, text this person. So if you hear that voice, lean in. It is protecting you. It is saving you. And in my next phase, I didn't just focus on healing wounds. I focused on bringing life back into my life. And I did that through dance, through reading, through development and learning, things that I've always loved, but that I got so far away from. And so I looked for classes and communities centered around those things that brought me joy. I found dance classes and I went to group events. I went to women's circles. I focused on finding that community. And I made time for stillness and slow movement. And I traded, instead of just laying there in bed where I knew I was just desiccating, I traded that for stillness, for breath. I did slow yoga flows and I would be outside for 3 hours just moving. And in the beginning, I would go out there and I would have no desire. I would feel numb, I would feel heavy. And then once I started moving, once I started letting my body feel free, I would just cry through the entire yoga and I would just keep going, yoga after yoga after yoga. And by the end, I had cried it all out and I felt hope. I didn't feel as heavy. And so I did that day in and day out. And I spent hours outside every single day. I would work outside. I would do yoga outside. I would meditate outside. I would go for walks. I would just sit with my dogs. I would eat outside. Sunshine and nature are medicinal. They are so good for you. And then for the first time, I recognized the lesson that had continued to elude me, and that was surrender. And that realization, that lesson meant so much to me. I actually got it tattooed on my hand. I realized that I had been resisting the lesson. I had been resisting this phase of life. I was trying to exert control over something that I hadn't wanted to happen, and I was trying to control everything that was happening instead of just allowing myself to be where I was. I was resisting so hard because I was trying to control the situation, and I wasn't allowing myself to accept or feel the things because I was trying to push the situation into something else. And when I finally released it, when I just let it all go and I started focusing inward, it allowed me to move forward. And in going inward and forward, I realized I could create, and I did create, an entirely new vision for my life moving forward, a vision that I was so inspired by. And I started to feel joy again, not just when I thought of my future, but in the present, in the little moments, in the moments by myself, in the moments around people. I started smiling again. I laughed. And 3 things that I have learned through all of this, 3 major lessons, are: lesson number 1, if your energy doesn't change, you won't change. Your thoughts create your emotions and behaviors. And if you're in a loop, you're just going to get caught in the cycle. You will live the same life over and over again, and you will be stuck in a prison that you created. Next is that suffering is self-imposed. It's directly tied to what Gautama Siddhartha, better known as the Buddha, learned on his path to enlightenment. The devil is born of weakness or obsession of the mind that creates attachments. We find peace when we let these go. We create suffering for ourselves when we hold on to them and do not let them go. So step 1 to feeling better and to growing and expanding is to let go of the attachments, of the looping thoughts, of the rumination, of the things that you have no control over anyway. We have to let go of the attachments in our inner world. And that means that we have to truly surrender to the present moment. And finally, that love and gratitude are the ultimate emotions for creativity, for thriving, for building, for moving forward. Negativity repels, it detracts. When you feel resentment, when you feel depression, when you complain, it takes the energy from the energy field around you. and wallowing in any of those emotions all fall under that negativity umbrella. And so now you're a prisoner in your own energy. If we can exhibit love and gratitude and truly embrace and feel those emotions, and we love life, we can become and create the entire life that we desire. The devil only exists in your own mind. It's the things that you perseverate on. It's the negativity. It's the thoughts of hate. It's the thoughts of jealousy. It's all of the negative thoughts that consume you and detract from all of the other energy. And looking back where I was so consumed by what had happened that I couldn't let it go. I was consumed by the loss. I was in a lack of. And when we let go, and when we allow free-flowing thoughts, where we can have thoughts come in and we can observe them and we let them go, that's how we find freedom. Feel them, think the thoughts, but don't let them stay there. If this helps even one person struggling, then I have succeeded in what I wanted to do. You've got this. Look inward, move forward, let go, and take the wild way home.